A tax refund, for the most part, is not free money, and it's not a bonus, or it's not a gift. In most cases, it's the return of money that you have lent the government, so to speak, for free for a whole year. The tax life. Let's get to today's topic, which is what I'm looking at it as a myth buster. Okay, and you may not realize this. I realize this, but we have been sold uh, um, an idea, an ideal, a belief that tax refunds are a panacea. They're a great thing to get, and the bigger the better. And um, you should always go and want it and strive for, and the goal is to get a big tax refunds. And I am here to tell you my opinion as a 30 plus year tax professional and a taxpayer myself, that I think this is, in the most cases, uh, uh, a myth. I think, as a matter of fact, I know how big tax refunds as an ideal, was brought about. There was a time yesteryear that tax preparation wasn't even a career. It wasn't even an industry. And it wasn't until, you know, the last, I don't know, less than 100 years that tax preparation became an industry, a business, a profession for a lot of people. And as the necessity for tax preparation grew, and I wouldn't even want to say necessity, because it's still not a necessity. You can do your own taxes. You can learn how to prepare taxes. You can learn how to tax plan if you want. But some smart individuals that saw an opportunity and took advantage of the opportunity to create an industry and to create an idea of tax refunds, put that notion into play in our society, and that notion has grown and grown and grown over the years to a point where most taxpayers look for a big tax refund, or want a big tax refund, like a child wants a gift or a toy at Christmas time. And so, just to know, I was under the same belief system for many years, even when I was beginning my tax career as a tax preparer, and even to uh, uh, I don't say not in the not so recent future, but when I was brought to a certain change in my thinking, um, it's been my mission, one of my missions, I should say, when I sit down and talk to a taxpayer or a client in particular, to kind of let them know what my beliefs are about big refunds. So with that being said, um, let me ask you a couple questions. So this first question is, when tax season comes around and you think about, okay, I got to file between January and April 15th, are you looking for a big fat refund? I mean, is that something that excites you? If that is something that you're looking for, and you get excited about it, then I want you just to send me a message and say, hey, big refunds with the exclamation point after that. Okay? But I am here to tell you that I believe that in most cases, a big refund is not a good thing. It may not be a good thing. Okay? But I'm in the minority, not the majority. I looked up in today. I looked up how many people in the United States, in our society, what percentage of people think that a big refund is a good thing. And I found some different studies one by Lending Tree, which is a mortgage organization. They say that 42% of American taxpayers that file taxes think of a big tax refund is a good thing, and in fact have that money as a part, that tax refund as a part of their financial um, lifestyle, meaning that they put that refund that they're anticipating, hoping that it's the biggest, inside of what they're going to do for their financial plans for any given year. Okay, so that will tell you how important a lot of Americans think big refunds are. Another study I looked at said that 79% of Americans were had already spent the refund that they were going to get, and if they didn't get it on time, would be very stressed and cause a lot of distress on them, because in a lot of cases they had pre-spent it, if you will, spent it ahead of time, and was going to use that tax refund to pay back whatever they had purchased or was loaned to them. So I say that to tell you that a big refund is a big part of the thinking of most taxpayers in the United States, and I believe that um, we were sold that over time by the industry that created tax preparation as an industry. So with that being said, a tax refund, for the most part, is not free money, and it's not a bonus, or it's not a gift. In most cases, it's the return of money that you have lent the government, so to speak, for free for a whole year. All right. And I want to break down, actually, a little later in this topic, in this session, what constitutes a refund. But by the end of this session, stick with me to the end. I hope to give you a new way of thinking about a large refund, and how it might not be the windfall that you think it is, and how maybe your thinking has been influenced by society, and maybe that it's time to think about a big refund. Tax refunds, you could say, maybe even three if you consider the third one as a hybrid. But the tax refund that a lot of us are familiar with um, come from the government, and they come in the way of a payment from the government. Okay, and we may be familiar with this earlier in our life, in our tax life, because we may fit into this situation. But tax refunds, in a lot of cases for American taxpayers, are government subsidies. They are payments to taxpayers that might be of lower income, or in a certain situation with their family, might be a family of large size, might be a family of a lower income, it might be a family with a single parent taking care of dependents. And the refund that we may have gotten in that situation comes from the government, from things like the earned income credit and the child tax credit, and maybe even the American Opportunity Tax Credit. And that money comes directly from the government as a payment to American taxpayers to subsidize their other income and help them to make sure that we don't go necessarily under what American guidelines are, what they call the poverty level. Okay, and in that case, um, I'm all with the bigger the refund, the better, because when you're in that situation, that money could make, and probably does in a lot of cases, and my clients as well in their lives, can make a lot of difference. Um, but what you do with that refund also makes a big difference. But that's a topic for another session. What I want to talk about the type of refunds that I want to talk about tonight are refunds that are driven primarily from overpayment of taxes. And overpayment of taxes through the vehicle of withholding, which will come from your W-2, or if you're a business owner and you pay quarterlies or quarterly estimated tax payments, um, those payments go to create your withholdings for your business, and thus can create a higher refund, a big refund, if you miscalculate or overpay in your taxes. So those, and then you in some cases, taxpayers have a hybrid, which is a combination of money that they set aside in their withholding, in their weekly paycheck or biweekly paycheck, plus some of the government money, and that could be a hybrid. And again, a large refund in and of itself is not always a good thing. But tonight today I want to particularly talk about the refund that is driven from overpaying the government. Okay. So now that we kind of know what tax refunds are, what the makeup of a tax refund is in its conception, we know it's not a bonus. We know it's not a gift. It's either going to be um, a subsidy because you're eligible and meet certain criteria, or it's going to be an overpayment that came from miscalculation, or it came from a misunderstanding, or it came from, in some cases, even poor planning. Okay, so what I'm contending is that having a large refund that is money that was withheld by you um, is a result of um, misguided thinking. Okay, and I want to show you how that I believe the that how that misguided thinking affects your tax life. All right. One of the things that I want to show you is that how the government will easily accept that money on a weekly basis from your paycheck, your withholdings that you have from the federal withholding that comes out of your pay. And if your state has state income taxes, they withhold that money from your pay as well. Maybe not a lot of people understand that withholdings, federal and state, are voluntary. You determine, you have, in that instance, you have the control to determine how much you withhold. And you can withhold a lot, maybe more than you need to. That would result after the calculation of your taxes, that would result in a higher refund, maybe too big of a refund in some cases. And then, or you have the ability to withhold zero. And in my case, I have a lot of clients over the years that have went, exempt, and when it comes time to reconcile their taxes, they're caught short, and they have stress on them, and then that causes stress a lot of times to the person or firm that prepares their taxes in order to get them out of financial trouble, let's say. Okay, so we understand that in a lot of cases, overpayment, in this case that I want to talk about, is a result of either poor planning or miscalculation of the withholdings that you withhold from your paycheck, or if your business, the estimated taxes that you pay on a quarterly basis. Okay. So let me give you an example. All right. Now, in our offices, we see thousands of clients every year for tax preparation. And over the years, I've been trying to explain to people my new way of thinking in regards to tax refunds. Again, like I said, when I first started, it was like, hey, the bigger the better. The tax preparer, they seen as a hero, and everybody goes away happy. But when I finally got, let's say, call it woke, when I finally got woke, I started to realize that the wealthy people, the one percenters that we see, they have a different mindset, and they're not thinking about big refunds. because that is what I believe, a poor utilization in a lot of cases of your financial resources, the tool called money. All right. So I'm gonna give you an example. This happens to me every year, every tax season, and like I said, I don't know, maybe like the last 7, 8 years, I've been really trying to discuss refunds with certain clients, especially those that overpay their taxes because there was not a plan in place or anything strategically or tactically in place that would result in not overpaying and not getting a big refund. So um, I have a client. Her name is Lisa, and Lisa's been with us 3 years now. She's a nurse. Um, she knocks on the door of $100,000 every year. Um, she's single. She's taken some steps to reduce her taxable income through investing in her 401k or 50C33B, and she's done a pretty good job at that. But she still always ends up with a refund, usually around uh, $8,000 or $9,000 a year. And every year when we talk or see each other on the video or um, you know, used to be she would come in, but that was back in the day. Not as many people come into the office, but the conversation always say, "Hey, look, you're getting this big refund. It's not due to the fact that you're getting government money because they're subsidizing you. You're not in the situation where you're lower income. You don't have any dependents. Lisa, this money is your money coming back to you, and I believe that you're giving the government. Well, I know you're giving the government an interest-free loan for a year just to get your own money back. And invariably, she says, "Yeah, I know, but I like to see the money hit my account, and I like to pay off some bills with it." She said, "I like to pay my car insurance, and I take a vacation." And what she does, what she sees this as, is as like a forced savings. And instead of her taking that money and throughout the year, she would rather have it at the end of tax season or during tax season, and then use it at that point in time. And every year I kind of ask her, well, you know, what do you got going on throughout the year, financially? And she'll say, oh, I usually incur some debt throughout the year, and I use some of the refund to pay that. And I tried to explain to her that that same debt that she's paying off at the time that she receives a refund, if she made some proactive moves and made some adjustments on her W-4 at work, then she could actually maybe not incur that debt that she's incurred throughout the year, or whatever debt she has, because she's going to have more cash flow in her accounts. She can pay those debts throughout the year, and maybe by the end of tax season, before refund time, she has her debt already down to zero, and she just saves a lot on interest throughout the year. And Lisa every year says, "Yeah, that's a good idea, a good idea." But, and then there's always a but, right? And she says, "But I like the feeling that I get when that money hits my account. I anticipate it." She said, "I don't like the whole tax preparation process, but I do like when that money comes and hits my accounts from either the state or the federal or both." This is what I'm fighting. I'm fighting feelings versus realities. Okay, so and we go through this conversation every year, and I don't mind, because this is my belief that the ability to have that refund throughout the year in your cash flow is a more thoughtful way of using this tool, money, to control the outcome, which is your tax life, which helps you in your financial life, which allows you to get closer to your dream. Okay? So now I want to um, give you a couple examples of the hidden cost of overpaying taxes. Okay? What I mean by the hidden cost, these are some of the things that you might be missing by waiting a whole year and giving the government your hard-earned money and giving them an interest-free loan and waiting the end of the year. These are some of the things that you're going to be, well, I believe that you could be missing, obviously, if you don't take advantage of them. Okay, so hidden costs, number one, you're giving the government an interest-free loan. Okay, that don't make no sense. All right, it'd be like a loan shark. You go into a loan shark or a payday loan place and getting some money, and then they telling you, oh no, don't worry about it. Just come back in a year and pay us, and you don't have to pay us any interest. Okay, that makes entirely no sense, and you wouldn't even expect that. You're like, well, I mean, I would expect to pay some interest. You would expect to pay. Matter of fact, you probably expect to pay some big interest at a payday loan place or a loan shark. Number two, you miss out on investment growth. Okay, so you wait a whole year to get your money in the form of a fat refund. Remember, this is your money coming back to you, and you miss out on the opportunity to invest. You don't even have to invest all, but some of it, and becoming an investor, like we talked about in one of the other lessons and sessions, is all about getting to that position where you are that 1%er, or you're having more control of your financial life. So you miss out on investment opportunities and investment growth. And that same money that, let's say you get I don't know, $8,000 refund. You're looking at $600+ a month that you could have back in your cash flow, and not even use all of it. But even if you do some dollar cost averaging at $300 a month, and you put that into the right vehicle, maybe a municipal fund or a municipal bond fund, and now you're going to be getting interest on that money on a quarterly basis, and then you're going to be making in some cases tax-free money, because in a municipal bond you may not have to pay federal or state taxes. So you're saving money and you're making money on the interest from the bond or the bond fund. And then depending on the type of bond, municipal bond, in fact, you might even not be paying taxes. So now you're not even paying taxes. So you got a win-win, maybe even win-win-win situation, versus letting the government have your money and getting it back at the end of the year with no interest. Okay. Number three, your cash flow suffers. All right. Cash flow. You may or may not know what it is. So basically, it's the money that comes into your personal accounts or business accounts that you have access to use to spend on your tax life or your business life. And cash flow is king. Okay, cash is king. Okay, now we're not talking about nowadays actual cash, but the amount of money that flows through your accounts gives you a lot of options. Okay, gives you more options than waiting a whole year to get this money and then having it for a smaller period of time and having to make decisions in a vacuum in a shorter period of time, versus having that money in your cash flow month to month, and in some cases, depending on how often you get paid, it could be week to week. So you could actually have more money in your cash flow, in your accounts to use weekly, versus waiting a whole year and getting a lump sum of money. And now you possibly making some rash decisions because you got this, this windfall, let's say. All right. Number four, you might rack up debt throughout the whole year because you don't have the cash flow. and and in some cases you might even borrow to keep certain things afloat or going, when if you had the cash flow that you were waiting on at the end of the year, or the end of tax time, I should say, if you had that cash flow month to month, by monthly, bi weekly, weekly, then you might not use the credit cards as often and not have to be subject to 15 or 20% interest. You see what I mean? Okay. Um, that's just a change of mindset, and I am here to tell you that that's what these sessions are all about, to bring attention, to change your mindset, to get you to think about this. And then if the change, um, in thinking moves you to be intentional, then my job, my purpose is being fulfilled, and I am receiving rewards. Okay. So number 5, every now and then, you might have a refund delay. Okay, I'm gonna give the IRS credit where credit is due. They doing their thing this year in processing refunds at a good clip, a good rate. But periodically, every now and then, refunds are delayed. Now, I don't know if you've ever been in the situation, but I have, honestly, where at the time you had in your mind and in your budget, and maybe even made some promises to people and institutions that, hey, look, I'll have it to you by this date, and that date that you're talking about, this date is the date you expect your refund to come. And as a tax professional, and on the tax preparation side, in my 30 years, this is what happens, okay, to a person or a taxpayer that is anticipating a refund, a large refund, let's say, to take care of promises that they made. And every now and then, the money doesn't come when they were expected for it to come. There's a delay of some sort, either due to something you may have done, or your tax professional may have done, or the government. I remember in 2021, there were millions of taxpayers that were waiting on money in the form of refunds, and they had to wait for months. And in particular, nowadays, don't try to do an amended return, because you're gonna be waiting almost almost a year now. But on a typical refund time frame, yeah, every now and then you promise somebody, hey, I'll have it to you by this date. You timing things up. What happens in my situation? We get through the tax interview. I give them their numbers, and they're happy with the numbers, so to speak. And then the very next question is, when do you think it's gonna get here, right? Invariably, and I'm like, okay. So the IRS tells us to tell the clients, it could be up to 21 days, and then you see in their eyes, like, okay, I promised by this date. I mean, 21 days. And then sometimes you get a sigh. Oh, okay, that's good. And sometimes you get that look like, oh, still the stress, still the distress, because the timing doesn't match up. But yeah, every now and then, delays are, something that happens, and that causes stress and distress on taxpayers, and sometimes even tax professionals. Because if you're any kind of tax professional, or if you have any kind of good tax professional, they want their clients to be happy. They want to serve their clients. They want their clients um, to be better, to improve, to have a good life. So if you see your client in distress, if you any kind of person, if you any kind of tax professional, it causes some distress for you as or as well, and you're like, oh, there's anything I can do, but really not. After you go through the process, it's really not a whole lot you can do, but hope and pray that the timing meets up. So again, those are some of the hidden costs of having to wait, and when you overpaid your taxes and you're expecting a refund back, and you want the big fat refund, and in some cases it doesn't come in the timing that you want. So, in my opinion, maybe having access to that money month to month might be a better tactic, better strategy. Okay. All right. So now that I've kind of talked about what refunds are, why I think overpaying, whether you know you're overpaying or you just haven't planned for it, is not a good thing. Hoping and wishing and anticipating the fat refund of your own money, I don't think that's a good thing. Let me give you a few things that you can do to control the situation a little better, okay? And I'm gonna move fast through these because I still got a couple things I want to talk about, and I also got to give you our principle for this session, okay? So first thing you can do as a tax tactic, this is not a strategy, but this is a tactic, which is something that you could do yourself as part of a full strategy. But update your W-4. Go to go to your, well, okay. So back in the day, they used to say personnel office, right? I'm dating myself. And then it graduated to human resources, right? And then now, I don't even know if they have that, but you go to your employee portal and make adjustments on your W-4. W-4 is the form that you used to put down how many um, dependents you have and how many exemptions and allowances, and now the form looks totally different. And if it wasn't for the IRS .gov website that I use, hell, I would still be confused. But you can go and adjust your W-4, and you can adjust your W-4 in most cases any point in time you want. And my suggestion is, if you don't understand how to do it, then take the services, even if you gotta pay somebody. But every quarter, especially if your income is subject to fluctuation, you're gonna get a raise, or you're in sales, or you're in an industry that has layoffs. I mean, you should always be as a part of a regimen, making and looking at your withholdings to make sure that, in my opinion, that you're not going to over withhold too much, and that your cash flow throughout the year stays steady. And you can adjust your W-4, which is federal, and then again you can adjust your withholding at your state level. I don't know what every state is, but I live in the state of Georgia, and it's called a G-4. But that's something you can do automatically as a tactical thing. Next tactical thing that you can do is you can, and probably with the help of a professional, calculate your liability and pay only what you need. Okay, and this is primarily for business owners, not necessarily for W-2 employees. But a business owner has a lot of control because they know how their business is going to react in a lot of cases. And businesses, in a lot of cases, are required by government, especially if their business is making a profit, to send in payments on a quarterly basis. It's real similar to your withholding from your paycheck, but businesses are required to pay on a quarterly basis, and they send that money in based on sales and then based on projected sales as well. And they can make adjustments on their on their estimated tax payments to also increase their cash flow. So if you're a business owner and you're paying estimated quarterly taxes, and you know that one part of the year, typically and historically, is a part of a year that you don't have as much cash flow, then you can make your adjustments in that time period and make sure that you talk to a professional, make the adjustments so that you're not overpaying, reducing your cash flow in that season where you may not do as much business. Okay. All right. So those are two things that you can do right now yourself or with the help of your tax professional. Um, and it can positively affect your cash flow. It can help you to pay off debt. You can still set money aside for that vacation. If you have kids, you know that there's always something that your child wants or needs, whether they play sports or need some gloves or some cleats or a new bat or whatever, basketball stuff. But yeah, and having that cash flow instead of waiting till the end of the year, I believe is a better proactive way to utilize and run your tax life. All right. And then finally, you can redirect your number three. You can redirect the the cash that you're sitting and waiting for the whole year. You can redirect that into smart investments. Okay. So I also do financial investing and financial advising, financial planning. And what I find in our system, in our society today, is a lot of taxpayers or a lot of citizens, let's say, we're not planning very well for retirement. And when I talk to clients and ask them about their retirement, some people don't ever want to retire. I happen to be one of those people. I want to work as long as I like what I'm doing and I'm serving people. And when I don't like it anymore or becomes more of a burden, then I'll stop. But there are people that really want to quote unquote retire. They have that dream, and one way that you can actually make that dream more achievable and maybe hit your goal from a timetable standpoint is have that cash flow. Okay, instead of waiting for that $7,000 or $8,000 at the end of the year, if you had that throughout the month, you can go back to what I said, dollar cost averaging, which is basically taking the same amount of money every month and investing it into the market. Okay, and market goes up, you still invest in the same amount of money. Market goes down, you still invest in that same amount of money. Okay, you're taking that same amount of money and investing it um, consistently. I don't want to say religiously, but consistently. Okay, and with your advisor, you maybe make adjustments on the actual investments, but typically the market will go up. I mean, it just has, and it does. But obviously, some things that go up go down, but it creeps back up. So history is in your favor if you're consistent dollar cost averaging and systematic investing. So you take some of that cash flow, not all of it, but take some of it every month, invest it in a nice mutual fund. Let's say something that you don't have to watch on Robinhood or um, any of these apps that you have on your phone. You're not a day trader. You're just investing the same amount every month in a mutual fund that have professional investors that invest for you, and then you just let it grow. Or you max out your 401k, maybe take the extra cash flow that's now coming back to you and increase your percentage that you put into your 401k or your 403b, and maybe that also might increase the percentage that is matched if your employer doesn't match. So you can see how you can affect, just by making adjustments in your tax life, you can affect your financial life, and then that affects your, let's say, your retirement life. All right. Again, this is all about bringing attention to your tax life, and then that things that you do in your tax life, if you're intentional about those things and consistent, they will make changes and positive changes in some of your other lives. Okay. So now that we know that there's ways to keep more of our money by not over withholding, okay, and not getting a big fat refund check of our own money back without any interest on it, okay. And I want to talk about the principle for today, okay, real short and easy. It's called the principle of ownership. I think we mentioned it in a session previously, but I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it in a couple of different ways. First way is what you don't control owns you. Okay, the principle is the principle, the law of ownership. What you don't control owns you, and then you could look at it conversely. What you own, you control. And then when we put this in the framework of overpaying in taxes and waiting for a fat refund at the year to then blow it on something, or I don't want to say use the word blow it, but maybe spend it, or yeah, uh, you have less control, and you're affecting your tax life and your financial life less than if you took that, made the adjustments. Like I said, even if you got to go to a professional, maybe even pay somebody to help you, um, and and be real intentional, okay, about this. And we only got so many years on this earth, okay. And I'm here to tell you that it goes by fast, okay. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about, right? And you want to make sure that you get the best, and do the best, and be a good steward of this tool called money. Okay. And so again, uh, what you don't own owns you. What you don't control owns you. I mean, it's the law of ownership. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to, again, this boils down to the ownership gives you a certain level of control of the tool. Okay. And then if you're a good steward of it, and you make really good long-term and some short-term decisions, then you you can then affect principles that I talk about. They work in all areas and all aspects of our life. But the power of ownership in life. Let's do this. Let's remember that a tax refund is not a prize. It's not a gift. Um, in most cases, you shoot for the big fat refund. You hope for it. You're looking for it. It's basically we we got bamboozled into thinking that it's a good thing. And now that you know better, um, I just want you to think about maybe making some intentional moves to do some things a little different. Okay. And again, that's what these sessions are about. Here's a challenge. Okay. I want you to look at your last tax return. Now we're deep in the season, and some of you guys have already gotten your tax return done. And if you have a refund of over $1,000, okay, and you're in the refund category of this money is your own money, not in the refund category of that you've gotten government money to help your family out, and to keep you above certain economic levels. But if you got a big refund over $1,000 and it's your money coming back to you, you might want to think about making some changes. Okay, I know that I've given you guys tonight some some really good food for thought and some really good options. Okay, and but I also know that you know only a percentage of you guys, a small percentage, are going to make changes. But that doesn't deter me. Um, Nobody really likes change, and for some of us, it takes hearing some thoughts and some ideas over and over again before we do change. Some of us will never change, um, and that's okay. Um, but the idea that there are options should give us some peace, some solace when we're ready to change if we do. So yeah, I want you to look at your last tax return, see if you got over $1,000. If you got over $1,000, you might want to think about taking some of those tactical changes that I talked about, adjusting your W-4, um, looking at investing in that income in some high yield investments, making some changes that would throughout the year affect your situation. So maybe you didn't get to a situation where you needed money toward the end of the year. All right. And then the next thing I want you to do is check your withholdings. Okay. And I suggest quarterly, and see if you're on target for keeping your refund relatively small. And then the next thing is think about what you're going to do with that additional cash flow that comes to you when you make the changes. If you make the changes. No. When you make the changes. What are you gonna do with that extra cash flow? Okay. Do you need to talk to a professional? Okay. Or do you have something in mind um, that is sustaining, maybe paying off some bills, um, becoming debt free if you can, or keeping your debt low, maybe increasing your credit score so you can buy that dream house, okay? Or um, maybe helping your son or your daughter go to college, pay for some of their bills, or maybe giving more to your church or your mosque or to your favorite charity. But what would you do with the additional money that you would see from the adjustment? Think about that, okay? And and also, keep that in mind that again, money's just a tool. We are called to be good stewards of this money. We are called to be intentional with it. And every now and then somebody just needs somebody to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, let's do a little better if we can. Let's move forward. Let's maybe think about things a little differently. Maybe think about the big fat refund of your own money coming back to you differently. All right. All right. Well, I appreciate the those that you guys that are watching whenever you're gonna watch, and whenever you see this, I do appreciate if you stay to the end for sure. Even if you started it, I appreciate that. And as usual, I like to ask you guys to always be asking yourself, what's my dream?